We were discussing a topic called global commons. Today we'll discuss environment as global commons. Today's topic is environment as global commons. First I'll give a lecture, then I'll dictate notes. Environment as global commons. In the pre-industrialized age, as we have no industries, as we don't have much population, environmental degradation is not at all an issue at that time. It is a negligible issue. In the pre-industrial age, environmental degradation is not a big issue. In 1960s and 1970s, most of the newly independent countries got industrial technology. They started developing their industries. Particularly in Afro-Asian nations, they got independence in 1950s and 60s, and they started developing industries. And then the issue of environment and environmental protection, the issue of environmental degradation, environmental protection have come into the main fore. The first ever international summit on environment, the first ever international summit on environment, Stockholm Summit. Stockholm Summit was held in the year 1972, and the summit was inaugurated on June 5th. The summit have taken place from June 5th to June 11th. The Stockholm Summit was inaugurated on June 5th. So, June 5th is considered as International Environmental Day. The first ever environmental summit, Stockholm Summit, on June 5th. So, June 5th is considered as International Environmental Day. Stockholm Summit is also called as UN Conference on Human Environment. Stockholm Summit is also called as UN Conference on Human Environment. In this conference, they have decided on many principles about how to protect environment, how to protect ocean resources, how to protect natural resources, and what actions the country has to take to protect the trees. All these things they have discussed. An Earth Watch program was initiated. UNEP, United Nations Environmental Program, with its headquarters at Kenya, Nairobi, was also started. UNEP with its headquarters at Kenya, Nairobi also started. So the first ever international summit on environment called Stockholm Summit, also called as United Nations Conference on Human Environment, it was held at Stockholm on June 5th, 1972. On June 5th, 1972. And in this summit, they have agreed that they will meet again in 10 years to review how their commitments were fulfilled. In the Stockholm Summit, they have agreed that again they meet in 10 years to review how the commitments were fulfilled. In 1982, they met at Nairobi, Kenya. In 1982, they met at Nairobi, Kenya, but they realized that nothing much was achieved from the last 10 years. They realized that nothing much was achieved in the last 10 years. In 1983, a commission was constituted with the chairmanship of Norway Prime Minister Mr. Brundtland, Brundtland. A commission was constituted under the chairmanship of Norway Prime Minister Brundtland in 1983. This commission report in 1987. Brundtland Commission gave a report in 1987 titled Our Common Future. The title of the Brundtland Commission report was Our Common Future. And in 1992, till that date, that was the largest summit, biggest summit in the world. Not only environmental summits, in all the summits, it was the highest attended summit. More than 173 nations attended, called Rio Summit, Earth Summit, Rio Summit or Earth Summit, or United Nations Conference on Environment and Development. 1992, Rio Summit or Earth Summit or United Nations Conference on Environment and Development. This is considered the world's largest summit till that time. It was held at Rio de Janeiro, the very big town in Brazil. Brazil's capital is Brasilia. Rio de Janeiro is very big place in Brazil. And in this summit, the most important question, even for prelims, is Agenda 21 was signed. In Rio Summit, Agenda 21 was signed. Agenda 21 means there are 21 principles which are important to be followed by the countries. So in Rio Summit in 1992, Agenda 21 was signed. And in the same summit, 3 important conventions were open for signatures. In the same summit, 3 important conventions were open for signatures. UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC. UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC. Second is UN Convention on Biodiversity, UN Convention on Biodiversity. The third is UN Convention to Combat Desertification, UN Convention to Combat Desertification. There are 3 important conventions that were opened for signatures on the auspicious of, on the eve of Rio Summit or Earth Summit or UN Conference on Environment and Development in 1992. 3 important conventions. What are the 3 conventions? UNFCCC, United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. Second is UN Convention on Biodiversity. Third is UN Convention to Combat Desertification. UN Convention to Combat Desertification. And UNFCCC came into force in 1994. UNFCCC came into force in 1994. UNFCCC as such is not binding. It is as such is not binding. The protocols made under UNFCCC are binding. UNFCCC as such is not binding, but the protocols made under UNFCCC are binding. And every year we listen the word COP, C-O-P, Conference of Parties. These COP summits will be held under UNFCCC. COP summits, COP summits, Conference of Parties were held under UNFCCC. Okay? And you all know the famous protocol, Kyoto Protocol, was made under UNFCCC. Kyoto Protocol is binding but not UNFCCC. The protocols made under UNFCCC can be binding. So we will discuss about Kyoto Protocol little later. In 2002, we have Johannesburg Summit on Sustainable Development. In 2002, we have Johannesburg Summit on Sustainable Development. And later on, we have many things like Durban Summit in 2009, Durban Summit in 2011, and 2012 we have conducted Rio Plus 20. We have celebrated 20 years of Rio Summit. In 2012 we have Rio Plus 20, And in the same year we have Doha Summit also. And in 2014, the COP Summit, COP20 was held at Lima, Peru. In 2014, the COP20 was held at Lima, the capital of Peru. In 2015, the COP21 was held at Paris. The COP21 was held at Paris, the capital of France. So you all are listening the word Paris Climate Deal. We all know about Paris Climate Deal. We will discuss how it got evolved. Kyoto Protocol, which was made in 1997, had a target. Kyoto Protocol had a target. Between 2007 to 2012, the countries in the Kyoto Protocol have to reduce their greenhouse gases and bring down to 1990 levels. Based on 1990 levels, they have to reduce by 5%. The Kyoto Protocol target is by 2007 to 2012. In this time frame, they have to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and bring them to 1990 levels. Based on 1990 levels, they have to minimize it to, they have to reduce it to 5%. This was the target. And many important countries in Kyoto Protocol, they have not fulfilled the target. America, which is the highest emitter of greenhouse gases, around 22% of greenhouse gases were emitted by America. America have not signed the Kyoto Protocol. For all these reasons, Kyoto Protocol failed. For the namesake, second phase of Kyoto Protocol was established from 2013 to 2017, but it is only for namesake. So, in Lima Summit in 2014, all the countries were asked to give their INDCs. All the countries were asked to give their INDCs. As you all know, Kyoto Protocol period was 2007 to 2012. By 2012, the countries understood that nothing was going to materialize with Kyoto Protocol. We have to make a new protocol in place of Kyoto Protocol. We have to make a new protocol in case of Kyoto Protocol. And the new protocol should be drafted by 2015. It should have a draft by 2015, and it should come into force by 2020. It should come into force by 2020. In pursuance of this idea, in Lima Summit in 2014, all the countries were expected to submit their INDCs. All the countries were expected to submit their INDCs. INDC means intended nationally determined contributions. INDC means intended nationally determined contributions. All the countries are expected to give their contributions. What you are going to do for environment? What is your promise to protect the environment? This is called INDC. So, by next summit, Paris, all the countries have sent their INDCs, including India. India have sent its INDCs to the Paris Climate Deal, climate proposal on the eve of Mahatma Gandhi Jayanti, October 2nd, 2015. So, India have given three important promises. India have given three important promises. One is India has to reduce its emission intensity. India has to reduce its emission intensity by 33 to 35% points based on 2005 levels by 2030. That means by 2030, India will reduce its emission intensity by 33 to 35% based on 2005 levels. What do you mean by emission intensity? Udgarala Tivrata. What do you mean by emission intensity? Emission intensity means for producing every unit of GDP, how much greenhouse gas emissions you are making. For producing every unit of GDP, how much greenhouse gases you are emitting. This is called emission intensity. That means by 2030, India will bring down its emission intensity levels based on 2005 by 33 to 35%. That means in all its developmental projects, India is going to adopt eco-friendly systems, eco-friendly technologies. For example, LEDs, for example, ACs, for example, in every construction, in every industry, they are going to follow eco-friendly. Then only we can reach the target of reducing 33 to 35% points, 33 to 35% of emission intensity based on 2005 levels. Second promise is in the entire energy requirements by 2030. In the entire energy requirements by 2030, India is going to fulfill its energy requirements, 40% of its energy requirements by renewable energy sources. By 2030, in the entire energy requirements, 40% of its energy requirements, India is going to fulfill from its renewable energy sources. What do you mean by renewable energy sources? Solar energy, wind energy, nuclear energy, all these things comes under renewable energy sources. As you all know, renewable energy is a eco-friendly energy. Renewable energy is a eco-friendly energy. The third promise which India have made is we are going to create an extra carbon sink of 2.5 to 3 billion tons. We are going to create an extra carbon sink of 2.5 to 3 billion tons by 2030. What do you mean by carbon sink? Carbon sink, as you all know, trees inhale carbon dioxide. More and more tree cover means more carbon sink. They will sink the carbon dioxide. So we are going to sink 2.5 to 3 billion tons of carbon dioxide by 2030 by creating an extra forest cover. Already we have very good forest cover. In the recent state of forest report, we have very good forest cover and India's target is 33%. So if you have 33% of forest cover in India, we can definitely create an extra carbon sink. India have made these three promises, that is to reduce the emission intensity by 33 to 35% points by 2030 based on 2005 levels. To meet our renewable energy, to meet our complete energy requirements, 40% should be meted out from renewable energy. 40% should be from renewable energy. The third thing is to create an extra carbon sink. To create an extra carbon sink of 2.5 to 3 billion tons. 2.5 to 3 billion tons. To create an extra carbon sink of 2.5 to 3 billion tons by 2030 by increasing the forest cover. These are the three targets in the given to India promised in the Paris climate deal. And 2015 they met at Paris and all countries have submitted their INDCs. All countries have submitted their INDCs and American elections took place after that. Obama have gone out and Trump have taken the position in America. Trump told America withdraws from Paris climate deal. America, the largest contributor of greenhouse gases, have withdrawn itself from Paris climate deal. America, the largest contributor of greenhouse gases, have withdrawn itself from Paris climate deal, remember. And we have COP22, COP23 and the COP23 last year is at Bonn. And this year we are going to have COP24. And on October 1st, there was a IPCC meeting, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. IPCC, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change meeting is at Incheon, South Korea. Incheon, South Korea. The target is they have to Incheon, South Korea, IPCC, the target 48th session on October 1st, 2018 to adopt a special mechanism on limiting the global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius above the pre-industrial levels. 1.5 degrees Celsius above the pre-industrial levels. Right now, assembly is a special session is going on in the Incheon. IPCC's special session, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change special session is going on in Incheon. Okay. So there are many efforts that were taken to protect the environment. The thing is, new protocol in place of Kyoto Protocol is going to come into force by 2020. And all the countries should come forward to do that. But the developed countries like America, they are not willing to do this, because as they were already industrialized and their industries still need to contaminate the environment for their production, they don't want to oblige for anything. The best example for this is, all the developed countries agreed to pay $100 billion fund for green climate fund. $100 billion fund for green climate fund, but they have till date paid only $2 billion. They have till date contributed only $2 billion. This is a pathetic thing. Coming back, we have Kyoto Protocol. And Kyoto Protocol wanted to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. They want to bring it down to 1990 levels. Based on 1990 levels, they want to decrease for 5%. Carbon dioxide, methane, hydrochlorocarbons, perfluorocarbons, there are many greenhouse gases. Coming back, international efforts in protecting the environment as global commons. They have many protocols and conventions. Ramsar Convention on Wetlands. We have Ramsar Convention on Wetlands in 1971. Ramsar is in Iran. To protect the wetlands, we have a convention called Ramsar Convention. And we have, say, Minamata Convention on Mercury. Recently India ratified it. To reduce mercury levels, we have a convention internationally called Minamata Convention. The name Minamata is very important, is very significant. The name Minamata is very important and very significant. You know the reason? The reason is, Minamata Bay in Japan have faced this disease. There was a contamination of water through the nearby industries. The industries emitted mercury, released mercury into the water. The fishes swallowed the mercury, and people who have eaten the fish, they have died. So slowly the word Minamata Bay, Minamata disease related to mercury. Minamata Bay and Minamata disease related to mercury. And Ramsar Convention is on wetlands. We have Basel Convention. Generally we use the word Basel, BASL, Basel for banking. But Basel in environment, in the international environment, is for transboundary movements on hazardous waste. Transboundary movements of hazardous waste. We have Nagoya Protocol on access and benefit sharing. Nagoya Protocol on access and benefit sharing about biodiversity. Protecting the biodiversity, the benefits of the biodiversity should be shared by everyone. And we have Cartagena Protocol on biosafety, transport, handling of biodiversity materials. Cartagena Protocol on biosafety. We have Rotterdam Convention. Rotterdam Convention on pesticides and chemicals. Rotterdam Convention on pesticides and chemicals. So we have various mechanisms and various protocols for the protection of environment. So that is also important to remember. What are the international efforts for protecting the environment? We have IUCN, International Union for Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources. We have CITES, Convention on International Trade on Endangered Species, CITES, CITES. We have Convention on Migratory Species of Wild Animals, Convention on Migratory Species of Wild Animals. We have World Charter of Nature, World Charter of Nature, and we have various Montreal Protocol on ozone depleting substances, very important for exam. Montreal Protocol on ozone depleting substances. Already in prelims you got this question. Montreal Protocol belongs to ozone depletion, and you have Convention on Biodiversity as we have discussed. So there are various conventions and protocols relating to the environment internationally. Various conventions and protocols relating to the environment internationally. Here you should understand a word called CBDR, Common but Differentiated Responsibility Principle. Common but Differentiated Responsibility Principle. CBDR means all countries in the world have the common responsibility to protect the environment. All countries in the world have the common responsibility to protect the environment, but the responsibility of already developed countries is more than the responsibility of poor countries. Though all countries have equal responsibility to protect the environment, though all the countries have common responsibility to protect the environment, the responsibility of developed countries is more than the responsibility of developing and underdeveloped countries. This is called principle of CBDR, Common but Differentiated Responsibility Principle. CBDR, Common but Differentiated Responsibility Principle. And as you all know, Mahatma Gandhi said, earth can satisfy everyone's need, but not everyone's greed. So greedy countries should have to contribute more. Greedy countries should have to contribute more. This is called CBDR. And we have one more principle called Sustainable Development Principle. The word sustainable development have become a buzzword today. Very famous word. Enjoy your rights in such a way that your future generations should also get the same purity in the atmosphere. Your future generations will also get the same sustenance in the environment. This is called sustainable development. As Gandhi said, the air, the water, the natural resources. The air, the water, the natural resources are not the properties inherited from our ancestors. The air, the water, the natural resources, they are not the properties inherited from our ancestors. They are the loan we have taken from our future generations. They are the loan we have taken from future generations. We have the obligation to pay it back with the same purity. You have the obligation to pay it back for the future generations with the same purity. So in environment, there are various principles also. One is sustainable development. Next is polluter pays. Polluter pays. Polluter, polluter, PAYS. Whoever contaminates the environment should pay for it. Very important international principle, polluter pays principle. That means national courts and international courts apply this principle with respect to environment. Whatever industry and whichever the country or any person contaminates the environment which affects others, then he has the responsibility to pay for it. That is called polluter pays. Polluter pays. And we have few principles in environment called absolute responsibility principle, vicarious responsibility principle. When you do something wrong in environment, when you contaminate, you are absolutely responsible for it. Absolute responsibility principle. Vicarious responsibility, VICARIOUS. We have one more principle called vicarious responsibility principle. For example, if there is a multinational company, it establishes a factory here and the owners of the company are sitting abroad. The servants of the company are working here. Though they are Indians, the major company, the main head is responsible for what all happened. For example, say Bhopal gas leakage case. Mr. Anderson is not present when the accident has happened. He cannot say I am not responsible, because whatever negligence committed in his company, though he is not in person present in the company, he is responsible for that. This is called vicarious responsibility, because you are establishing a company. You are observing nowadays in the international environmental issues, most of the MNCs are involving. They are getting involved, multinational companies, and companies are responsible. It is not that they can absolve their responsibility. And we have one more principle in international environment called res ipsa loquitur. RES IPSA ipsa LOQUITOR. That means the issue speaks for itself. The accident speaks for itself. For example, if a big damage is caused because of one nuclear explosion or some environmental explosion, the country which is responsible for that shall have to pay, because he cannot say I am not liable, because the accident or the issue speaks for itself. Res ipsa loquitur. There are many such principles with respect to environment. Okay, you are observing in the recent past oil spilling. For example, a company is importing oil from a ship. In between, the ship have docked in some other country. There is an oil spill from that country, from that ship, and the country's dockyard got damaged. So the major country which is importing the oil and the ship under whose name which country it was registered, they are responsible. So there are many environmental issues. There was a doctrine in international environmental law. The doctrine is doctrine of reasonable foreseeability. Doctrine of reasonable foreseeability. That means, can a man with a reasonable knowledge, can he foresee the damage? If he can foresee that, he is absolutely responsible. This is called doctrine of reasonable foreseeability. Can a reasonable man foresee that? Can he visualize that? If he can visualize, he is responsible for that. If he can visualize, he is responsible for that. So there are many international doctrines with respect to environment. Polluter pays, sustainable development, absolute responsibility, vicarious responsibility, CBDR, common but differentiated responsibility, and vicarious responsibility, doctrine of reasonable foreseeability, res ipsa loquitur. There are various principles with respect to global commons, environment as global commons, because global environment belongs to all, and global warming affects all the countries, all the people. Even if a single country commits a damage, it will directly or indirectly affect all the countries, not only people but also the flora and fauna. So all the countries are equally responsible. And the government of India also have taken many steps. Environment Protection Act, Biodiversity Act, and we have wetland protection, and we have wetland protection rules, we have National Green Tribunal, and we have Wildlife Protection Act, Prevention of Cruelty Towards Animals Act, and we also have Animal Welfare Board of India. So there were many acts, and we have separate Ministry for Protection of Environment, Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. So we have extensive protection of environment in India also, but we are discussing the topic environment as global commons. What are the global efforts? And there are certain words also, like our common future, global agendas, setting up of global agendas, joint action, joined up thinking, joint action, joined up thinking, and we have endorsing common principles, providing global leadership. All these things we have words. Last year in 2017 political science question paper, they gave a question on ecofeminism. You cannot find textbook answers for such questions. I'll explain the theme of ecofeminism. There was a Kenyan woman called Wangari Maathai. There was a Kenyan lady called Wangari Maathai. She started Green Belt movement in Kenya, planting the trees. She involved women more because she integrated environmental movement with women rights movement. And environmental degradation affects women more. In India, we have a famous ecofeminist called Vandana Shiva. We have a famous ecofeminist called Vandana Shiva. She started an NGO called Navadanya to protect the various cereals and pulses. She started an NGO called Navadanya, and she is a famous ecofeminist in India, Vandana Shiva. Ecofeminism in political science is a movement emerged along with green movement, along with the second wave feminism in 1970s. Along with green movement, along with second wave feminism in 1970s. Ecofeminists compared natural exploitation, nature's exploitation with respect to the exploitation of women by man. As women are oppressed, women are subjugated, environment is also exploited. There is a comparison between women's exploitation and environmental degradation. And second thing, if environment gets affected, it is the women who are going to be affected first. As you all know, in the recent economic survey you have seen feminization of agriculture. In agriculture, females are getting into the retaining in the agriculture, men are coming out. Men are coming out. And with the climate change and global warming, agricultural production is decreasing, and automatically women will get affected. Even in food production, if there is a damage, women will get affected. In every sort of environmental degradation, women are vulnerable, and women's problems and nature's problems are same. Nature is like women. The second wave feminism compares women with nature. So environmental degradation affects women, and there is a comparison between man's exploitation over environment and man's subjugation of women. This is the idea of ecofeminism, started during 1970s with the second wave feminism. It was a very short question. If you write a brief answer, it's enough. That's called ecofeminism 2017. There will be one question regularly about environment. If not, there will be an essay compulsory, or if not, there will be ethics question. I'll give an answer where, for example, there was a question on environment versus development. Environment versus development. Few years back, I happened to read a report by a committee headed by Sunita Narayan. When a company is established, it causes an effect on environment. If it is going to cause an effect on environment, let the company in its capital earmark certain funds called Environmental Restoration Fund. Let the company in its capital earmark certain fund called Environmental Restoration Fund. Let it earmark. Let it use the money only for environmental restoration. And if you observe, in most of the environmental movements we find women. Vandana Shiva, Sunita Narayan, Down to the Earth, and Medha Patkar, Narmada Bachao Andolan. So women support should also be there in all the times in the environmental protection. So you should be able to write some questions which are sudden and unpredicted in the examination. Okay? Shall I? And before going to that, there are certain words which are in yesterday's essay written by Narendra Modi. Use certain words. He used Prudvi Sukta in Atharva Veda. Prudvi Sukta in Atharva Veda, where he told the earth encompasses oceans and rivers, water. The earth encompasses food. The earth encompasses the life. For there is no earth, no life. No food, no water. Nature, Mother Earth is very important, and we have to harmonize our life with Mother Nature. And environmental protection is important for human empowerment. At the end of the essay, Narendra Modi told, environmental protection is very important for human empowerment. So all these words you can use.